Yo, what's up everyone? This is Ignatius. Today I'm excited to bring to you my revised format for the AFK SIM Farmer. This is a build that I was prolific with at the end of the .2 season, and I had always planned to sort of reimagine it in .3. So here it is. It's bigger, better, cheaper, and stronger, and I'm excited to deliver it to you. Okay, I'm going to do very minimal editing. I've already done 2 cuts at trying to record this video and have just failed because I'm just being way too wordy. But let me start by saying that I went into the Mobalytics guide for a very long time last night, and I made very careful updates. And I'm also trying to change how I go about building these. I'm trying to make the opening section very short and then really use the table of contents and try to really be concise with explanations so that you can get to, you don't have to scroll very far to get to the gear and to get to the skills and to get to the tree, which is what you care about. Now, a lot of you care about the trade links as well, and so those are all here, and they're down at the bottom. I've got them for every item. They're preloaded with lots of filters so that you can sort things out. I make notes about what modifiers are required and which ones have some flexibility and kind of what you're going for there. So yeah, that's the Mobalytics guide, and I'll kind of use this as a template for how I walk through the video here. Okay, so AFK Sim, basically this build cannot die, and basically this build kills everything in Simulacrum all the way through round 15. This shell I have here, I've been testing even up to last night on stream. I've been testing different shells to understand the minimum viable Invincible character and what flexibilities are there so that you can be, budget conscious and whatnot. And so this is it right here. This is minimum viable, super easy scaled down version of this farmer, and I don't think the investment cost is really that high to get it online, and then it gets really high if you want to min max some of the minion stuff that's going on. But yeah, that's a bit of an introduction. I want to give a shout out to 2 creators. One, his name is Oscrix. He I will attribute to discovering the minion tech. So we have captured a Spectre as a cornerstone for the single target damage in this build. That Spectre is Bogfelled Commoner. He appears in Act 3, and he has really high max life, 38k here. If I swap, he goes up to 60k, and he does damage based on his max life. So yeah, the Commoner is awesome, and thank you, Oscrix, for not only finding him, but for showing us how to go get him ourselves. I've got a link to his YouTube and the video for how to find the Bogfelled Commoner here. The other is Lazy Exile. Everybody knows Lazy, super awesome creator. Lazy last season is who I found first who understood the Triple-Recoup Shell for the defensive mechanic on this build. There's a couple of different shells you can use to be invincible, but this one I think is the cheapest and scales the highest. So yeah, shout out to those 2. Okay, part 1, how are we unkillable? We use this unique armor. It's called Sacrosanctum. It gives us recoup of energy, shield, and life at the same time. And then we also use mana recoup and then effects that cause us to take damage from mana before life. And between those 2 things, we have what we call triple recoup. All sources of effective hit points are draining at the same time, and all are recouping at the same time. And that's what is so powerful. Sacrosanctum is a cornerstone of that. The other is At Serious Disdain. This helmet is a non-negotiable because it gives you your max life as extra max energy shield, and it also has damage taken bypasses energy shield. So that way your life pool is draining even when you're taking ES normal damage. The other things that happen here is evasion stacking on gloves and boots with deflection tags. So these are pretty high evasion gloves and boots, but they're not capped, and you'll notice I even have body runes in them for max life, whereas I easily could have iron runes in them for more evasion. And they both have a tier 1 gain deflection as evasion affix on them. So in Lazy's shell, which I tried first, you can get your ES up to 12, 14k, but I still died in the later tiers occasionally. I mean, we're talking 1 in 10, but I want to be able to die never. When I do this, I want to be able to walk away and not ever come back and be dead, because that's awful. And the evasion shell achieves that. You need to get your evasion up to about 30%, and your deflection needs to be up to about 20% with a 40% reduction, and you will find that you never die in these AFK Sims. And you only need evasion on gloves and boots. So that's another huge important part of the shell. All your remaining gear you use to cap resists and to stack life and mana. amulet has some flexibility. You can use the Defiance of Destiny, which was kind of like the cornerstone amulet for last season. I've swapped in a rare amulet, which gives me rarity and spirit. That's kind of just because I can, and it gives me more flexibility to test things out. I originally ran the Defiance, and it worked fine. And then we run a Blasphemy with Enfeeble, highest level you can, and that, reduces monster damage. And then there's also Elemental Weakness in here, which amplifies all the fire damage that we deal. Okay, that's kind of the overview of the defensive shell. Now I'll talk about how we kill things. So the first way that we kill everything is that we are Ritualist, and Ritualist has a skill on the Ascendancy called Blood Boil. And Blood Boil shows up right here, and if you're high enough level, it'll be 5 linked and level 20. And put my links in here that I have, and you'll find that it just does lots of damage to things in the radius around you, and then it spreads that damage when those minions die. And in combination with some of these other effects, everything dies pretty quickly. The second is Blood Barrier. This shield inflicts corrupted blood on minions that you block their attack. So this deals with the rare monsters on sort of the outskirt of the sim pretty nicely, and also the ones close. All right, so now for the more specific techs of this season. You're going to use Bind Spectre, capture a Bogfelled Commoner, and socket in Infernal Legion 3, which is going to turn your Bog Commoner into a Righteous Fire just igniter. Here he is right here walking around igniting everything. And this guy is mainly here for Kosis, because Kosis is a bit of a problem and was a problem last season. Kosis is not a problem at all anymore, thanks to Oscrix and the Bogfelled Commoner. You could, if you want to, is just run the Commoner on swap and swap to a Scepter that has lots of spirit, and there's all sorts of flexibility there. Mine is a one-stop shop, no weapon swap, no nothing, just kill everything as is, but I'll kind of show off some of the flexibility just so you're aware of it. And then, thanks to Lazy for calling out Heart-Stopping Presence, you got to have this Anoint on your amulet, which is going to reduce life regeneration rate of enemies in your presence. That's essential for some of the rares that are going to pop in and be super, super tanky along with life regen, and they would never die without the Heart-Stopping Presence there. Again, Blasphemy with Elemental Weakness. And then this is an option. So on the Scepter for damage, we have an option. And I've run both as main. You could run a Giga Rare Minion Scepter, which, as you saw, it doubled my Commoner's health, which basically doubles his damage. And you can see Kosis is taking damage, but if I swap, he'll take a lot more when I get the Commoners going on swap. I think the Commoner's up here. Yeah, okay, so Commoner's down here. This is on swap. This is double damage. And you may want to do that and control him in that way. It's kind of up to you. If you want to be cheap and more straightforward and never weapon swap, just run a Guiding Palm of the Heart. And this is going to give you the Meteoric Shrine effect and enough spirit that you can summon the Commoner. All right, last thing I'll mention about how we kill stuff is Rarity. And this is something I've done a lot of testing with in the last day. The Guiding Palm gives you this Fire Shrine, and the Shrine kills lots of stuff. And then the Commoner is dealing damage through a Support Gem, which kills lots of stuff. And even though I have about 150 Rarity, I don't believe the Rarity is applying from the kills from the Commoner and the kills from the Shrine. So if you're going to do this a lot, that may end up being very relevant to you. And there's really two solutions. One I'm not going to talk about, and that is switching to a Wind Dancer-based kill build, which is going to be slower but still works. I did try it quite a bit, and it is viable. It's just a lot slower and a lot less clean. The other, and this is the one I have in permanently, is to put a Calling Strike in your Spectre, and then run one Skeletal Sniper with some projectile modifiers, and also Calling Strike. And so this Calling Strike is going to allow these minions to kill the uniques and the rares with attacks. And those attack-based kills are going to apply whatever rarity modifier that you have at the moment. So yeah, a little note on rarity and killing stuff. Okay, I talked a lot about the gear. While I talked about those two things, I'll do a quick recap. Again, Scepter is rare or Guiding Palm. Your shield is Blood Barrier. You have Sacrosanctum at Serious Disdain. Your glove and boots are Evasion with Deflection. And then everything else only pads resists and health and mana. It's basically what you do in every other slot. All your rings, if you're running the rare amulet, the belt, all that. You can use these 3 charms. I think the charms were flexible. Last season they were essential. Probably the bangle is the most important one to keep in there. And then you could run like Rarity or something over here. And of course you don't need any flasks. Okay, I'm trying to think if there's other things in the skills I should call out. Yeah, let me talk about what each of these is doing and sort of what flexibility is there. Purity of Fire you get from your Scepter, and the Spirit Gems in Purity of Fire do not cost extra Spirit. So put them in. They have no cost. Fantastic. You will have 2 Purity of Fires if you're running the minion-based Scepter weapon swap, so just keep that in mind. The Commoner has gem flexibility. You could pull out Dialia's Desire and put in the Ignite Duration gem. I can't exactly remember what it's called, but it makes Ignites last longer, and it works. Magma Barrier is here because it gives you 30% increased block chance. That's its only function in this. I talked about the Blasphemy. Ritualistic Curse is ideal here, but it only works if you have more Spirit. So if I go to my weapon swap and I have 84 Spirit, it works, and it heightens both of these curses. But it has a 140% multiplier, so it uses a lot more Spirit. And on my main, I don't have enough for it, so I just take it out. A special note is that you have to have Whispers of Doom in order to have 2 curses. So if you don't have this, there's no point in having 2 curses in your Blasphemy. So just keep an eye on that. Ghost Dance doesn't do a ton because we don't have an incredible amount of damage. But if you do the math, it's doing quite a bit of recovery, and it's constantly recovering. Like, you'll see it show up and disappear from here just like constantly. So it's adding a little bit more of that ES recoup here. And then again, I talked about the Sniper. This is just here for call. We run Nova Proj and Fork, so that way the arrows are bouncing around everywhere and hopefully calling those rare and unique monsters for us. Okay, the only other thing I need to talk about is the skill tree, and it's honestly pretty straightforward and not very complex, whereas last season I think it was very complex with lots of mandatories and jewels. This season it's just easier. You're starting here because you're Ritualist. You're going to path up north. We used to path south and take Glancing Blows, which I did start with that method and stacking lots of block, but it just didn't work out, and it actually ended up being better to be forced to go this way because it's a lot stronger. Now keep in mind, we have tons of minion-based nodes, I think 26. You could swap all those out and get all 26 of them, or I guess 24 out of the 26 of them on a weapon set, and then you could use 24 for more defenses for yourself on the main set, and only swap to the minion when you need to kill something really sticky, like this rare, or especially Kosis later on. I am trying to do this build as a one-stop shop. No swaps, no nothing. I'm just AFK. I just walk around and kill stuff while I'm going about my normal everyday IRL. So this is a, no swaps, no confusion tree. And there's basically only 3 things going on. We're getting Energy Shield. We're getting Recoup in the form of life and mana. Some of the mana nodes have damage taken bypasses, so that way we actually are losing some of our mana. And then lastly, we have minion life and resist nodes, and that's basically it. We don't care about minion damage. All the damage is coming from the minion life, and that's the tree. It's really that simple. The jewels, I'm not even going to show my jewels. It doesn't matter what your jewels are. If you are dying because you couldn't afford the gear I have, you could put Recoup or more max energy shield on sapphires in your jewel slots. You could get extra max resist in the Heart of the Well. I will say it's very nice to have a Megalo with Pliable Flesh. Pliable Flesh is over here, and if you path to it, it's 7 points. So we'll say that jewel matters. And then this From Nothing is like 20 Exalt. Passives in radius of Necromantic Talisman. That's essential. That allows you to allocate all this stuff without pathing to it. And that's pretty much it for the tree. And yeah, I think that's pretty much it for the video. Any feedback you have on how I'm managing this Mobalytics guide, because previously I've been a lot more verbose, which maybe is helpful for some, but I'm going to try to stick with this more concise and precise approach for now. Any feedback you have on my videos, thank you very much for that. And then any questions that you have, come on into our Discord, and I have a special section for this build in the Discord. You can ask your questions there. I'll be paying close attention to that over the next 24 hours after I publish this video to see if there's any questions I can answer for people. Again, I've provided trade links at the bottom of the MOBA for all of the gear. At the time that I created these links, which was today, nothing was really that expensive, and there was at least a handful of options in every item. I imagine at least a few people are going to follow this build after I release this video, so, good luck if stuff runs out. And you may have to get a little bit more creative with jewels and your passive tree in order to compensate for not having the items that are most ideal in the slots. Thank you everyone for journeying with me on this PoE 2 season. I'll give a small plug for PoE 1. I'm going to be switching over to PoE 1 content. I did a big survey on, PoE 2 versus PoE 1 situation in the community, and what I find is that about 60% of the people that I interact with in the PoE space either haven't really touched PoE 1 or they did and they weren't able to overcome the barrier and find their way in. I want to say as a plug, it's worth overcoming that barrier. It is far and away the greatest ARPG and probably the greatest PC video game that has ever been made. And the two games function so differently. What's so exciting about PoE 1 is that you spend 3/4 or even more of a season figuring out what the best farm is. And that is such a creative and endlessly cerebral process. So, in PoE 2, we kind of understand the best farm really quickly, and then we just grind it. We make new characters for fun. In PoE 1, you spend so much of a season with the community trying to figure out the best farm and then optimizing that farm, and it really, really is a blast. So I'm really looking forward to the PoE 1 season, and come on into the PoE 1 discussion area if you're trying to dive in and you're struggling or you're not enjoying it. We can give you some moral support and help you overcome. Thanks again, everyone. Direct any questions or feedback my way if you get some time, and have a good weekend.